Hey team, and welcome to the TeamCPNZ Quick Connect podcast, where you can stay informed, keep connected, and learn from each other along the way. I'm your team captain, Richard Greer, and on today's podcast, with a pleasure to have a chat to Karen Hill, who has just completed her first ultra run. Karen's a top-end cross-country mountain bike rider who over the weekend completed her debut ultra event in Tasmania. We had a solid 8 weeks available after her last XCO race in Hobart to turn those riding legs into running legs. But Karen is someone that knows how to train. She knows how to listen to her body and also push herself, and she did an awesome job in preparing. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about that, but also her race day as well. Any ultra endurance event is effectively a nutritionathon, I would say, which is also another thing that Karen has in her favour. She's a nutritionist, and she worked alongside the event to help others dial in their nutrition strategies for their ultra too. So today we're going to talk to Karen about her preparation, how she felt as she crossed the finish line, and all the bits in between, and the good bits. And as we know, any ultra run, there's also some tough bits as well, which will be interesting to share. But for those cyclists out there, before you click next, also going to have a yarn to Karen about her Christmas holiday trip, where she and her partner completed a full lap of Tasmania by bike, which was 1,200 kilometres in just 7 days. So a lot to get through. Karen is going to be good chat, so dial in. And you're listening to the Team CP Connect number 31 and 176 of these podcasts we've done in total. And Karen, welcome to this show. How are you doing?
Thanks, Richard. I am going pretty good this morning, feeling a bit more human today, which is nice.
A few days afterwards, we talked the other day about the 6-day turnaround of DOMS. If you put your thumb into your quads and give them a good press, how are we feeling? Is it all gone, or is it still a little bit of like, ooh, can still feel that a bit?
Well, I actually still have a tiny bit of tightness.
Okay, that's good.
But I could walk. I actually caught up with a friend yesterday and went for a walk. And so I figured that was actually pretty good progress.
Were there any stairs, any downhill involved in that walk at all?
There was a little bit of downhill, and that was actually not too bad. So overall, I would say I'm probably 92% recovered.
92, okay.
So actually the muscles and physical body, I think, are more ready to go than probably more. My head still just has a little bit of general fatigue.
Yeah.
So that's where I sort of like, still a couple of days, a couple of more good sleeps, but I'm ready to get moving, kind of still in that easy get out, remember how to ride, paddle, run. Running on Sunday will definitely be a go ahead. But
okay. So. Well, yeah. Just a trot, just gently, just get yourself rolling again. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
No, that's good. So tell us a bit about your background, Karen. Like, what have you done in the past? You've ridden your mountain bike. That's kind of your love, your first love and your go-to. Tell us about what you've done, what sort of level you've ridden, et cetera, et cetera. Give us a bit of a lowdown.
Yeah, so I think I probably view it's kind of changing the way I view what I do, but I think I'm a mountain biker first and foremost, and then coming into a bit more multi-sport stuff. So I turned just to mountain biking in August of 2012, and then started doing mostly cross-country events, cross-country Olympic, and then some of the marathons and stage races, and done that sort of, I guess, at our national level, and started a couple of World Cups when they were in Cairns back in, I think it might have been 2016 or something like that now. Cool. And then completed and raced in a few stage races around, sort of went to East Timor and India and Nepal and Canada. And so I guess bike has always been a good way to travel and race and see different places. And you go to different places you just never have gone to otherwise. So, sort of where it's taken me. And then, done quite a bit of racing in New Zealand as well. I think I may actually only there's maybe two Aussie women that have finished on the podium in the Waka 100. So did that a few years ago, and cool. and yeah, sort of got a few more lined up there in the coming year, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's pretty fantastic. So that gives us a bit of a feel about where you've come from, and then so sort of we got in touch from a multi-sport perspective, didn't we? To say, okay, it's a different challenge for you, do something a little bit different. So you obviously you've been at that real elite level from a mountain biking perspective, but since we got in touch, you had this idea about this ultra run. You were doing a bit of running anyway, but it wasn't a big thing for you. Tell us a little bit, I guess, your running.
Yeah, so I guess I started in triathlon, and so the last triathlon I did was in 2012, and I hadn't ran for, like, I might have done a little bit of running on and off, but probably didn't really actually start running until I moved to Tassie, sort of 3 years or so ago, and then probably in the last couple of years I've started to get back into a bit of trail running. And so yeah, I hadn't done too much, and with the Kunyani mountain run I'd done the 25k 2 years ago, and then I did want to do the ultra last year, but sort of didn't build up properly, and my body had sort of said no to doing that last year. So and so that was sort of when I sort of reached out to you again, and I did obviously the multi-sport race here in Freycinet Challenge last October, and that sort of, I guess, reinvigorated I guess my love for running and that sort of thing, and getting back on the trails and trying to do that, and sometimes you just get these events that are kind of like an itch that you need to scratch, as was the ultra, and that sort of being able to, I think, train for them properly, or build up in the best way that you can. So I hadn't really run in quite some time prior to coming back to Hobart. So it's, yeah, and then it's building up slowly as we go.
Yeah, well, we built up relatively quickly because you did the Hobart series, the cross-country series, the Hobart race in 8 weeks ago, effectively, wasn't it? And then it was like, right, let's get these running legs sorted and less of cycling legs, and let's do some missions, which you did a really good job of. Like, you've also you do a good job of your strength training as well. So you're used to moving your body differently, and therefore you were able to hold your body together pretty well across the build-up. So I think that went pretty well on the whole. One of the key things we did around your training was let's sort of create a couple of adventure missions to kind of go a bit longer and have some days out there and sort of practice a bit of that nutrition and pacing and all that sort of stuff as part of that. How did they go? Because they were a bit of a highlight too, weren't they?
Yeah. And I think that's the part that I love the most as well. Like, with any part of training, like, I just love actually being able to go outdoors and go on adventures, and actually the training part, is something that I love to be able to do. And the runs in the lead up to this, I sort of already had a couple of ideas in mind that I wanted to go and do. So they worked out pretty well in terms of the lead up to it. And that's part of it. Like, we have such a great place, like, live in such a great place with so many, like, good areas to go exploring, and so being able to train for an ultra, it was like the perfect, I guess, lead up in a way in our summer months where we had longer daylight, so you can kind of go on some of those longer missions.
Yeah, nice. We've had a couple of Tasmanians on the podcast. You've got a pretty cool training ground. It's been quite fun to, I guess, zoom out of Strava and see where you actually are at. And then also you've picked up a bit of paddling as well, and sort of getting stuck into that too. So you've kind of got it all going on with these awesome mountain bike trails. Like, you've got a road cycling community that go pretty well and challenge you on I think a Wednesday night mainly, and then the trails and paddling as well. Like, tell us a little bit more about, I guess, the environment and the community involved in Tasmania.
I And it was one of the reasons I moved to Hobart. It's just like a big outdoor playground. And I see it it's a little bit like New Zealand, but a smaller version. Like our mountains and things are a little bit smaller than, I guess, New Zealand. So in some ways it's like New Zealand, but a little bit smaller, and it's just in Hobart, you've got access to the water for like paddling or surfing and, water sports. But then, you've also got awesome trails right on your doorstep for, mountain biking, running, and hiking as well. And then you have got like the road riding side of things here as well. So it is just an awesome outdoor playground, and everything is pretty accessible. For people who have grown up in Hobart, I guess, their idea of traveling is quite short, like a half an hour drive is a long way. But when you've moved from the mainland, it's, we're used to traveling like really long ways. Like before I moved over here, I'd drive an hour and 20 minutes just to get to good mountain biking trails. And I've always, because I lived in Melbourne for a long time, and when I first started mountain biking, it would be normal for me to have to drive 50 minutes to get to good trails. So it's not really out of the ordinary. It's less traffic here, so you actually cover a lot more ground. And you can be in the Southwest Mountains in an hour and a half, and it's the middle of nowhere sort of thing. So we have access to everything, and it's a great outdoor community here.
Nice. So since we're on the training gig, before we get into this ultra, tell us about your lap of Tasmania that you and your partner got stuck into. So you bought a new gravel bike, I think, just before that. It's like, right, let's go and do this. And I just did some maths beforehand, jumped on Training Peaks and added up to be 1,200 Ks that you did over 7 days. So it's a fair bit.
Yeah, we had been looking at doing this, and we had planned to do it on our road bikes. And so it kind of came about just like sort of trying to stick to, I guess, as much of the coastline as there's so many, like, and this is the thing, there's so many awesome ways that you could have done this trip, and we'd sort of decided we wanted to just try and stick as close to the outer as we could. And we were originally going to do it on our road bikes, and there was one sort of section through the Western Explorer Road up the West Coast that was questionable as to whether we would, I mean, you could get through it on a road bike, but we weren't sort of sure, how enjoyable it would, how sort of slow it would be, and that sort of thing. Because, and so we had ended up making the decision to get gravel bikes, which ended up being a really good decision, I think, in the end, because we ran 40 mil tires, I think, and so they still move really well on road as well, but it was just that little bit extra comfort on some pretty corrugated dirt roads, out the back of nowhere, that would have been pretty rough and brutal on a road bike. But we stayed in accommodation each night, so we didn't have to carry a lot, so it meant you could still move at a relatively decent pace. But it was trying to find the balance between, actually we did do ridiculously long days, but, not sort of having too many nights accommodation, and, completely blowing the cost of the trip out, and sort of having that balance. So we'd sort of picked some different places, not really based on anything too much, but we decided we'd have like a rest day up in Stanley, sort of up on the northwest coast, and then the rest of it was just sort of pieced together from there. And a lot of it was actually around on the west coast. There's a beautiful little place called Corinna, and it doesn't have a lot of accommodation, so it was really based around when we could get a night's accommodation there, and sort of had to piece the trip around that. And then I think our shortest day ended up being about 150K. And so, it's that thing in the first 3 days, it was just pretty much 340 odd K into a headwind, and we had to take our full winter kit, for those first 3 days, and we ended up posting that back once we got up to the northwest and sort of off that west coast. So we'd sort of just hit this weather window and we just didn't have any room to move. So it was just pack the winter weather gear and kind of get going. But sometimes it just adds to, the whole kind of element of the trip.
Yeah. That's a great obviously looking at the weather forecast to say I'm just going to post this warm gear home. I don't need it anymore. That's good. But my question for you before you mentioned about that was you had some pretty hot weather too. I think I remember seeing some sort of sprawled out on the grass kind of, I'm out. Give me an ice cream. I've had enough of this.
It was coming back. So we kind of had everything across, the whole trip. And it was our last day. We were coming home down the East Coast, and it was pretty hot that day. And it was just, I sort of hit, I can't remember exactly how far out we were, and even I was just sort of done on that day, and the heat and everything. And I just was ended up just not enough water or anything like that. Michael tends to be fine in, really hot weather. It happened to me when we were overseas doing our trip as well, we were in Portugal or somewhere, and it's just so hot, and I've just had a meltdown on the side of the road. And it was just okay, try and just keep pedaling to wherever we're going. And just the downhill runs and everything, and sort of got into the next little town. I was just give me all of the cold drinks, sorbet, everything, bring the body temperature down as much as possible. It's that's when you need a support car with some ice socks and extra hydration. And so we sort of had everything on that trip. It was all weather conditions, and and it's just beautiful. It's such a good way to see a place as well.
Just to feel it and smell it and see and be involved in it. Last year we did a back road 400 trip around Northland actually, and sort of put out there to our community. So I feel there's a Tasmania option, and we've got a tour guide or someone with some local knowledge that we might need to talk to.
Oh my gosh, there is so many whether it's on road or off road, there is just so many options here to kind of go exploring. It's just finding those snippets of time where you can take extended periods of time off. And it works well because Michael's a school teacher, so he has those blocks of holidays. Nice. So it's just sort of trying to align and save up my leave to be able to then do some of those trips there. And it's great to have so much to explore kind of in your own backyard.
Yes, so good.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, you feel like we've got a little bit distracted talking about biking. We come here to talk about running. So let's come back to this ultra that you just did the last weekend. So as I mentioned, you're a nutritionist, you supported the event and helped others get themselves organized for this event. And was it the night before you made a decision to say a specific nutrition decision that did end up affecting your day a little bit too? To talk us through, I guess, your final days of preparation and how you're feeling standing on the start line.
Yeah, so it was a really silly decision, and I still don't know why I ended up doing that. Really, it's the one thing that I would never, do working with anyone else, but it's just, I don't know why, I ended up doing it with myself. We'd gone through the whole planning sheet, and, everything has sort of been planned out, for so long through all of my adventures and things like that. And, and then it was the night before I'd sort of helped organize, some of the things that were going to be at the feed stations, just to, around making sure you do have, some of those, there's the sport specific foods, there's, sweet, savory, salty, electrolytes, all of those different varieties of options that are there to kind of cover all those bases. Yep. And I'd sort of then been like, rather than, worry about a drop bag or, anything like that, I was like, I could just use what's at the feed stations, like it's all there. I'm, Vegemite sandwiches, gels, lollies, they're sort of my main, and sports drink, and, they're sort of my main things anyway. And so I sort of went with that, and it was just lucky that I had packed like a few extra of my own gels for the first, start to the first feed station. Mm-hmm. But so it was very last minute change, and I don't know whether it was even like out of nerves or just, something like that I'd sort of ended up changing, at the very last minute for that. And it did end up, being the one thing that, I guess sort of brought my day undone a little bit. But still with that in mind, like I still ended up, having a pretty good day out.
Yeah. I can see why you've done it, because you've kind of organised it, help get it sorted to make sure everything's underway. If it does help, before the Motatapu Marathon, which wasn't too long ago, we've got a partnership with ASICS, and they had these new sort of carbon plated trail shoes, not full plate in them, but they have a bit of a plate in them, and I went for a run around the car park in them 3 days before, and then I wore them round the day before just to say, do you reckon I could actually cope in these? And I bought both pairs of shoes, my coast to coast shoes and those shoes, to the start line, and I hadn't actually decided until I got off the bus of which shoes I was going to wear. So and I ran in the let's take a risk and have a crack at these shoes, and it was okay. I survived. It probably wasn't too pretty, but it was all right. But I mean, I can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think, but doing this ultra as well, because there's a lot of little things that I think affect me more running than riding. Like if I was, and I mean, aside from the digestive things in terms of the impacts and being able to tolerate different foods and, your energy requirements and things like that. But it's a few small little, I guess, nuances that, I could only really work out from doing that experience. Mm. And I think with something like an ultra, you can read, you can prepare, you can listen to, lots of different experiences or other people's experiences and things, but until you actually go through that journey yourself, you can't really comprehend like the feelings and everything that you're going to go through. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like, just putting those experiences into your memory bank, and it's like going through those what if this happens, and then I would do this. And after doing, I guess, for so many different mountain bike events and different events and things like that, you have a memory bank of what experiences and what things are going to feel like and how you are going to adjust to that. Mm-hmm. And you can pull from a lot of those, I think, for running as well. But there was also some things that I wasn't prepared for, or I didn't expect that I would, kind of feel that way in that moment. And I think, maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but even just going into the feed stations, especially, that first feed station, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of decisions. And, I thought, just sort of wasn't expecting that overwhelm, and not being able to just be like, oh my God, I don't know what did I need again? Like, what am I supposed to be picking up? What am I supposed to be doing? And then it's just like, quickly fill up bottles. Oh my God, I just need to grab something and get out. Yes. And so that then, sort of has a flow and effect for, later in the race, and then going, oh shit, like I've not like prepared for this. I haven't like grabbed enough. I haven't grabbed everything that I wanted. My sandwiches have crust on it. I don't have crust on my sandwiches when I'm running. And, you know, all of these. And then like the lollies are a different texture and different taste to, you know, what I have been used to. And, you know, and all of these little things that are, you know, quite simple. It's like, just rip the crust off. But then it's like, I don't want to throw the crust on the ground. Then I have to stick crust in my bag. And it's like all of these things that just are going on in your head that don't need to be going on if you just stick to your plan that you set out prior to, you know, prior to the race. And, and so it was, you know, those things. And then even at the next feed station, you know, it didn't have all the things that I was expecting there, obviously, because there are other elements. You know, some of these feed stations are in pretty remote areas, and, you know, what you can get in and what, you know, all of those different elements kind of come into play as well. And because you could have a drop bag at that other feed station, you know, there's all those sort of things that kind of come into play. So they were some of the little things that, you know, I hadn't necessarily done, you know, if this happened, you know, what ifs in terms of if I feel this way, what, you know, what am I going to do through that? And so they're just learning experiences, I guess, to know for, you know, the next time that they're going to come up, and either prepare in a different way or just be prepared, you know, walking into that kind of scenario.
Right, that's right. It's that thing about slow is fast and fast is slow thinking around in that aid station. That was so much going on, and you didn't even factor that of being a thing, because you had your own food, and if you had your own food in a drop bag, you just go to that and repack and then put stuff in and then away you go, rather than all of a sudden you had to sort of find it and figure out where it was, and there's people there, and it's that whole, because it's still early on in your race as well, and you're going quite well at that stage too, and you're like, I have to whip through this, and I do still laugh at the crust on your Sammys, crust on, crust off. They're just like, well, they've got crust on. What are we doing with crust?
I can't eat crust when I'm running. Like, this doesn't happen.
My daughter Bella, we make breakfast in the morning, and she sort of has toast for breakfast, and we've gone to a different type of bread, and since that bread, like, it's fancy bread, is like you have to eat your crust like every day. Like, she pretty much feeds the chooks because she doesn't eat a bloody crust. But I've just gone into eating her crust now, so I make sure that she doesn't listen to this podcast. Otherwise, she'll be back to, well, she doesn't eat a crust, maybe I won't either. Oh no.
It's just like they're too chewy when you're running, and, you know, it's too much. So. And, you know, at the other feed stations, it was fine, like, because I could just rip them off and drop them in the bin. But at that one, I just wasn't ready for it. Like, you know. So it was just like those little things that, you know, you don't really, that kind of are actually a thing. And you're like, it's so pedantic, but it just messes with your head.
Oh no! So as a result of that, so as I mentioned, you started well through this aid station. I don't have as much as what I planned to have. I've got sandwiches with crust on. I don't even know if I'm going to eat or not. And then obviously it's an ultra. Like, the aid stations are quite well spaced apart. They're about, was it 10 to 12 Ks? It's a bit over an hour to an hour and a half of running between each one. So when did it start to get hard for you? When did you start to kind of feel the effects of, I haven't quite fueled myself as well as I should have here?
Yeah, so the first two, and that race is broken up really well in terms of, it is like 11 to 12 K between each feed station, and the first two sections, like, I'd ran really well. And it wasn't until I left the second feed station that I was like, oh shit, I'm not feeling good. And that section from that second to third feed station was probably the real time, or the kind of major time that I was really in Struggle Town, I think. And that, you know, I spent a bit too much time there, but I didn't have, usually it would just be like have a gel, or have some sugar or some glucose and get moving again, get some energy in, keep going.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any of those things that I necessarily would usually like. And so it was sort of hard. And at that point, Michael was, we just missed each other at that feed station. But because I was running, my watch is my Apple Watch. So I then could message Michael to ask him, because he was going to a later feed station to grab me some of my own stuff, and that I had messed up with my nutrition really badly, and I needed some stuff at he couldn't get to Mountain River. It was the 4th feed station where he was going to be. So he sort of got all of that stuff to take there. But then I just sort of had to make the decision, once I got to the Mountain River feed station, and I think in my mind, I wasn't really expecting that section to be a section that I would have struggled on, but it was predominantly just the last sort of probably 5K or so is just all downhill, and I just couldn't get into a good rhythm running down. And it sort of was probably more jarring and sort of just wasn't running well there, but it was just sort of trying to get through it. And, once I got to that next feed station, I just had to take my time and actually try and get some, food and drink on board to get through to the next section.
Yeah.
And that section really is probably the only section out of the race that actually blew outside of my, A or B kind of goal times.
Yeah.
And, I think the second section I probably got a little bit too excited on and ran a bit too hard. Yeah. So I'm not sure, a combination of running a little bit too hard in that second section and not taking enough fuel on board. And that's sort of where it kind of came unstuck a little bit in that third section. And because then once I had a bit of nutrition on board, and I'd just take my time and reset a little bit at that third feed station, then it was just, walk, run up the next hill, and it was a long climb, a long slog up to the sort of traverse across what we call Montague Thumbs and Cathedral Rock, and it started to sort of rain across that section as well. But it just was fun. Once I got up to the top section and got back into a bit more technical sort of terrain, it I could get moving again, and the rain, and it just made it fun. It was just, I had good shoes, I had good grip, and you could just get moving and sort of play in the terrain a little bit more than.
Takes your mind off struggle street too, doesn't it? That I'm just actually enjoying the process of being here, and rather than, oh God, I've got so much to go, or my quads are hurting, I'm just kind of rolling through this and having some fun on a technical trail. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it was so fun. And then coming down, it was sort of, it was pretty slippy and stuff in some sections, but you could just, use the terrain to sort of help you. And then that section of the course there, because there's a few different distances that all go on that same day, and they brought in an alpine marathon course, which was the first year's run this year, and that course joins on and uses that same traverse across. So sort of coming through there, you're starting to see a few more runners and stuff as well. And I got to see a couple of friends who were doing the marathon as well. So that's that just made it super fun sort of through those sections, seeing some familiar faces and
awesome.
And being able to do that. And it was just it's a really beautiful section through across there, and then even down into the bottom of that trail when you come off it, and it's a pretty steep sort of fire road downhill, but I'd sort of found my groove again and could actually run downhill. It wasn't kind of a jarring kind of trying to run, trying like not to go. It was just, you could just flow down the hill. And then it was really nice sort of single track all the way, through back onto, there was a bit of like farm road, dirt road sort of to the feed station. But that's definitely, I think, one of like the best sections,
highlights of it. So you did well with the Mayday to say, could you please get to Michael to go and get your feed bag? So you've got some semis with some crust cut off, and then hopefully feeling pretty good towards the back end of it. How was that last kind of 5Ks or so towards the end with some proper nutrition on board, but legs that completely cooked by that stage? It's 66 Ks. And how much elevation was it? 3,500?
It was like 3.7 or 3.8, okay. I think it ended up. Yeah, being around that. So that was good, like, because I actually use a lot of the pure stuff, pure nutrition, like the gels and things, because they're just a nice fruity, fresh kind of flavor, and I can take a lot of them on board. And some sandwiches, even, through 9 or 10 hours, I can't take a lot of solid stuff on, when you're racing. It is a little bit different even to sort of going out and doing, long adventures, even for those racing sort of things, and use a bit of the endurance product, which has a bit of protein in it as well. But just being able to take on regular intervals, those gels through that back end, like, I actually felt pretty good. Like, I knew I had one more sort of short, steep climb to get up, and then we're on to what is called like the pipeline track. So it's on a slight downhill, and it's pretty easy running. So, you could get into just set like a pretty good rhythm and just keep going. And then that sort of felt like it's hard but good. Through there, like, I had good energy, and my legs and stuff were sort of holding together, and then we have to go up just before the last feed station, up one sort of another probably 5-minute hill sort of thing, and then across and down this other hill. And it was just coming down that last little hill there that my knees just had sort of gone for the day, and like I just couldn't keep running very well. Like, so I sort of had a good energy, but I couldn't sort of keep going. And I think like I hadn't really planned for like, what if this happens? What will I do? So it's like just trying to keep going. And the last probably 5K after that feed section into the finish, there is a lot more like steep downhills, and so trying to get down them, it was just a bit more of like a awkward shuffle kind of towards the finish line until I could get onto a bit of flat ground again to run in. So it was the last 5K, I definitely didn't run it. I lost a little bit of time there, but still in that last section, like, I was still relatively happy, like, with my time that I'd come in with, and like crossing the finish line, like I had nothing left, like to do that. So it was, being able to finish, and I think feeling satisfied with my effort for the day, knowing that like I definitely do a lot of things differently, in the next time. So
just being able to run at the end there, I mean, that's a win. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are walking by that stage. So even if it's a bit of a shuffle, then that's still pretty awesome. I've got this picture that I throw up in this podcast just in relation to how cooked were you at the end? So cooked toast, 1 to 9. Where were you sort of in bits of 0.5?
I was definitely like number 1. For that, I'd like.
Good to hear.
There was,
that's the fire alarms are going on in your house if you're cooking that toast.
There was, even trying to Maney, who does the emceeing for them, he's trying to like give me a high five at the end, and I just couldn't even, like, I was just like
lift your arm,
crawled across the finish line, and it's that thing, you're still supposed to smile through your thing, but I think it was just like so just sheer relief that like I had made it to the finish line kind of like in one piece, and you know, and just to actually kind of have finished that was just all of that. And then there was no moving. I don't think I've ever been like that sore after after an event.
Yeah, it's
Probably
different though, isn't it?
ever.
In cycling, like from a running perspective, it's just different. That eccentric landing, steep downhill, especially like that 5Ks worth of fire road or full drive track downhill. There's just unrelenting with that stuff, rather than a single track that can sort of give a little bit ups and downs in that. So you've done very well, and stoked that you made it to the finish line, and you're still smiling. Like it might have taken a few days for that to come back, but that's you're back again, which is awesome. So obviously nutrition was one learning. What was like one or two other things that you've taken away from it that you'll do differently or better next time?
I think it depends. I would definitely do a lot more just uphill running and downhill run, like long downhill running.
Yes.
But in the time that we had to prepare for that, like I still think, when I think back that, we did actually just turn that around in an 8-week, kind of period to be able to do that. And I was only 5 minutes off really my, big old time that I had set. There's, from a training point of view, obviously if I had more time, then I'd put in like just some more steep running or like long hill running or long downhill running. But, I think a lot of those things also just come with time.
Yeah, and you've got experience. You've got to stand on the start line and learn that too, just as you said about all the experiences you've had within your mountain biking.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it as well, is that, just actually getting out and having my first experience of doing that to then be able to put those in the memory bank and do that. So sometimes I think, you often need to do things twice, the first time to actually experience and see what it's going to feel like. And then, what you would do differently. And I think a lot of the things I would do differently are from a nutrition point of view and, from more of a mental sort of point of view rather than the physical preparation. Yeah. And I think just being more prepared for that. I think the other thing that I probably struggled with was the taper into it. And that is also, just being prepared for that, I think, differently as well. Like it's just that I don't mind doing the resting, but it's just being prepared for, spend a lot less time outside on the trails and sort of being prepared for that or, adjusting for that in other ways. So I think it's more around those kind of things than the actual, physical training preparation itself.
Right. One note, because as part of what we do is we try and make a plan, execute your race, and then review that. And one of your review notes that we wrote the other day, I thought was quite good. You mentioned knowing is different from experiencing. So, like in terms of nutrition, you know what to do, but you've got to actually go and experience it to then be able to know at a deeper level, don't you, and understand it more.
Yeah, definitely. And and it's funny, especially I think because I have a deeper understanding of what my body is doing, from a nutrition and digestion point of view and all of that. It's like I should know these things, but it's kind of that thing when it comes to yourself, it's always different. It's almost like I need to treat myself as I would a client or another athlete that I would be working with. But, it never really happens that way. Kind of thing like I take the time to do my race plans and sort of do all of that thing, but it is those little things that, I would never do with a client or, something else. And it's almost being able to do that with yourself and, treat yourself as you would like another athlete or something that you're working with.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome, Karen. Hey, thank you so much for sharing today. Thank you for joining us. You've got a trip across to New Zealand soon, in a few weeks' time.
Yes.
So we might get to catch up and maybe do a bit of an adventure into the hills potentially, and which would be a bit of fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's been a while since I've been over there, actually. So I always, love getting over there and playing in the hills and the trails and things over there as well.
And which bike's coming? Road bike, mountain bike, gravel bike?
Mountain bike.
Mountain bike. Okay, well done.
Yes. I don't think I could go to New Zealand without taking a mountain bike.
No, that's right. Good job. Nice work. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for sharing your story, and lots of learnings along the way, and cross off every day of the week.
Yeah, no, and thanks so much for your help getting ready for all of these adventures.
Yeah. Good job. Cheers, Karen.
Thanks. See ya.